The balloons were still swaying above me when the room went silent. I remember the exact second it happened, the moment my sister-in-law Sophia stood up, her wine glass raised like a queen making a toast. My hands were resting on the curve of my belly, the tiny life inside me kicking, reminding me that this was supposed to be my day. But her voice cut through the laughter. "I think it's time everyone knew," she said, her eyes locking on mine. "I'm carrying his first child, not you." The words slammed into me harder than labor pains ever could. At first, I thought I misheard her. The clinking of cutlery froze. Balloons bobbed as if even the air wanted to retreat. My best friend Hannah gasped, and someone dropped a fork. I looked to Daniel, my husband, my anchor. He sat pale, eyes wide, lips pressed together. But he didn't move. He didn't speak. He didn't deny it. My world tilted. I stood there, surrounded by pink and blue decorations, smiling faces twisted into shock. This was the moment everyone would remember. Not the carefully chosen cake, not the silly baby games, not the joy I'd been dreaming of. Just this. My sister-in-law stabbing me in the heart in front of everyone I loved. "Sophia," I whispered, my voice shaking. "What are you saying?" She smirked. "Oh, come on, Emily. Don't act so surprised. You didn't think he only wanted you, did you?" Gasps rippled through the room. My mother-in-law Margaret quickly rose, her hand resting on Sophia's shoulder like she'd been waiting for this. "It's time the truth came out," Margaret said coldly. "You've had us all fooled for long enough." The decorations blurred through my tears. I wanted to scream, to deny it, to laugh at the insanity. But Daniel's silence, his refusal to defend me, that was the knife twisting deeper. I stumbled back against the table, my hand brushing against an unopened envelope tucked under a plate. I barely noticed it then, but later I would remember it. The handwriting on the front. The way Margaret's eyes flickered toward it before I picked it up. At that moment, though, I could only hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. The guests began whispering, some staring at me with pity, others with hunger for more drama. Hannah reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I couldn't bear their sympathy. I wanted truth. I wanted Daniel to stand up, to say something. Anything. "Daniel," I croaked. "Tell me she's lying." He lowered his head, said nothing. The silence was louder than Sophia's words. My knees weakened, my chest tightened, and I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Everything I had built, my marriage, my future, my child's family, cracked wide open in front of everyone. And then Sophia added the words that would haunt me forever. "Face it, Emily. You're not the first. You never were." The room erupted in murmurs, but I couldn't hear them anymore. My baby kicked again, as if reminding me to keep breathing. I clutched my stomach, staring at my husband's bowed head, wondering if my entire life had just ended in the span of one sentence. If you were me, standing there with a baby inside you and betrayal breaking your ribs, what would you do? Stay silent and save face, or fight back in front of them all? I thought I had reached the worst moment of my life. But I was wrong. Much, much worse was still to come. The baby shower ended not with laughter, not with gifts or hugs, but with chairs scraping back and whispers cutting me deeper than any knife. No one knew where to look. Some at me, some at Sophia, most at Daniel. And Daniel? He just sat there, staring at the floor. I waited for him to speak, to shout, to laugh it off as one of Sophia's cruel games, but his lips stayed sealed. "Daniel," I said, forcing my voice steady, though I could feel it trembling like thin glass about to shatter. "Say something." He looked up finally. His eyes were wet, but his words never came. He opened his mouth, closed it again, then pressed his hands against his temples like the weight of the room was crushing him. Sophia smirked, victorious. Margaret squeezed her shoulder, whispering something only she could hear. And in that silence, something broke inside me. I grabbed my coat, ignoring the gasps and murmurs, ignoring Hannah's pleading eyes. I walked out with my head high, or at least pretending it was. But as soon as the door closed behind me, the tears I had been holding back tore through me like a storm. At home, the crib stood in the corner. White wood, soft blankets, a tiny mobile of stars above it. I had set it up just 2 days earlier, humming to myself about the life Daniel and I were about to begin. Now it stared back at me like a cruel joke. The silence was unbearable. My phone buzzed nonstop. Missed calls, texts, whispers disguised as concern. Are you okay? Did you know? What now? None from Daniel. Finally, at 11 p.m., the door creaked open. His footsteps were heavy, dragging like he was already walking in chains. Emily, he started softly. I didn't let him finish. You let her humiliate me in front of everyone. You didn't defend me. You didn't say one word. He rubbed his face, eyes bloodshot. I didn't know what to say. Then say the truth, I snapped. Is it true? Did you betray me with your own sister? The word sister burned my tongue, but it had to be said. He winced. Emily, please. Not like this. Not like this. My voice cracked into something shrill, something unrecognizable. When then, Daniel? When our baby is old enough to hear whispers? When Sophia waves her child in my face while mine grows up fatherless? He flinched, but still, silence. I could feel the walls closing in, the air thick with a secret too poisonous to breathe. He wasn't denying it. He wasn't fighting for me. And then, from the doorway, another voice cut in like ice. Margaret, my mother-in-law. You should stop asking questions you don't want the answers to, she said calmly, stepping inside without knocking like she owned the place. Sophia was brave tonight. You should learn from her. I froze, my hand clutching my belly. Brave? Brave? Margaret's eyes darted to the crib, then back to me, a sly smile curling her lips. Not everything belongs to you, Emily, she whispered. And then she left, just like that, as though she had blessed the house with poison and walked away satisfied. Daniel slumped into a chair, burying his face in his hands. His silence was worse than a confession. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to demand he choose me. Instead, I sat across from him, the crib between us like a reminder of everything at stake. My phone buzzed again. A new message from Hannah. Emily, I need to tell you something. About Sophia. About years ago, I didn't open it right away. My hands were shaking too much. If you were in my place, would you keep demanding the truth from Daniel? Or turn to Hannah, the one person who might hold the missing piece of this nightmare? Because I was about to find out that Sophia's betrayal didn't start tonight. It started long before I ever became Daniel's wife. The crib was supposed to be a promise. Every time I looked at it, I imagined soft giggles, midnight feedings, tiny fingers clutching mine. But after the baby shower disaster, after Sophia's smug announcement, it felt hollow. Like a coffin for the future I thought I had. I couldn't sleep. Daniel had taken the couch. Or maybe he'd just wanted to avoid me. I lay awake, the ceiling fan spinning above me. Every creak of the house reminding me that this wasn't home anymore. It was a stage, and I had been cast as the fool. Around 3 a.m., I rose and drifted toward the nursery. The faint glow of the nightlight gave the room a dreamlike haze. The mobile above the crib swayed gently, little stars and moons circling endlessly as if mocking me. And then I saw it. Something glinting between the crib slats. I reached down, pulling it out with trembling fingers. A bracelet. Silver, delicate, engraved with the initials S.M. Sophia Marie. I froze. The memory hit me instantly. Weeks ago, she had insisted on helping set up the nursery while I rested. She'd smiled, saying, "Think of me as your sister." Sister. How that word burned now. I held the bracelet in my palm, the metal still warm from the heat of my anger. Had she been here with Daniel? Had she touched the crib before me? Claimed my child's space before I even got to breathe it in? I pressed the bracelet into my hand so hard it left a mark. Behind me, the floor creaked. Emily? It was Daniel, his voice hoarse. I spun around. Why was Sophia in here? I demanded, holding up the bracelet. His eyes widened. For a moment, I thought he would lie. Then his shoulders slumped. She just wanted to help. Help? My laugh was bitter. By planting her jewelry under my baby's crib? By humiliating me in front of the entire family? He ran a hand through his hair, pacing like a trapped animal. I don't know how it got there. Maybe she dropped it. Maybe... Stop. I cut him off. You're defending her again. You always defend her. The silence that followed was louder than any denial. He wasn't defending me. He hadn't been for a long time. Later, I sat in the kitchen staring at the bracelet. Hannah's message glowed on my phone screen. I should have told you before. Sophia did something in college. Something to you. I hesitated. My heart pounded. Finally, I typed back. What do you mean? Her reply came fast. Let's meet tomorrow. It's not something I can write. I set the phone down, my stomach churning. My baby kicked again, a reminder of innocence in the middle of all this rot. I pressed my hand against my belly. I'll protect you, I whispered. Even if I have to protect you from your own father's family. But the truth was, I didn't feel strong. I felt small, powerless, humiliated. The bracelet glinted again under the kitchen light, almost daring me to wear it, to let it remind me of who I was up against. Sophia wasn't just a rival. She was a shadow that had been haunting me long before this pregnancy. And tomorrow I would find out just how deep her betrayal really went. The next morning, I didn't bother with makeup. What was the point of hiding the dark circles when my whole life was unraveling? I met Hannah at the little cafe on Maple Street, the same place we used to cram for exams years ago. Now, instead of textbooks, I brought a storm inside me. She was already there, 2 coffees on the table, her hands folded tightly. The way she looked at me, pity and guilt mixed together, told me she hadn't slept either. Hannah, I said, sliding into the chair across from her. What did you mean? What did Sophia do in college? She exhaled, her shoulders sinking. Emily, I should have told you years ago. I thought it didn't matter anymore, but after last night... Her voice faltered. You need to know. I gripped my cup. Tell me. Hannah stared into her coffee like it held the past. Remember James? The boyfriend you thought just drifted away junior year? My heart clenched. James, my first real love. The boy who promised me forever and then disappeared without explanation. He didn't drift, Hannah said. Sophia pushed him. I frowned. What do you mean? She wrote him emails pretending to be you. Ugly things. Saying you cheated, that you were only using him to make Daniel jealous. She even sent him photos. Photos? My voice cracked. Hannah nodded miserably. Edited ones. She made it look like you were with someone else. James believed it. He stopped answering your calls because he thought you'd betrayed him first. The cafe noise dimmed around me. My pulse pounded in my ears. She hated how everyone liked you. Hannah continued softly. How teachers praised you. How Daniel followed you around like a shadow. She told me once. Emily takes everything that should have been mine. The words landed like shards of glass in my chest. Why didn't you tell me? I whispered. Hannah's eyes filled with tears. Because James left, and then you met Daniel, and you were happy. I didn't want to ruin it. I thought it was over. But it wasn't, Emily. She's been at this for years. Last night was just the loudest attack. I leaned back, the chair groaning under the weight of memories. Sophia had always smiled sweetly, always hugged me a little too tightly, always called me sister. But behind those smiles, she'd been sharpening her knives since the beginning. "Emily," Hannah said gently, "this isn't just about Daniel. It never was. Sophia wants to erase you. From love, from family, from everything." The coffee in my hands went cold. That night, I sat in the nursery again, the bracelet still on the dresser like a taunt. Hannah's words echoed in my head. Sophia's jealousy wasn't new. It was ancient, and I had been blind. Daniel came in quietly, his shirt wrinkled, his face drawn. "We need to talk," he said. I looked at him. "About what?" "Which betrayal? The baby you supposedly gave your sister? Or the way you let her humiliate me in front of everyone?" He winced. "Emily, please. I never wanted this. Then why didn't you stop it?" My voice was sharp. He sank into the rocking chair, running his hands through his hair. Because my mother wanted it." The words froze me. "What?" Daniel's voice dropped. "She told me months ago. Sophia should be the one to carry the family's first heir. That it would secure everything secure." The word rattled me. "What do you mean, secure?" He looked at me, his eyes haunted. "There's something in my father's will." "Something you don't know yet." My stomach dropped. If you were me, would you demand answers right then? Or would you dig for the truth yourself, knowing your husband might already be compromised? Because I was about to discover that this wasn't just about jealousy or betrayal of the heart. It was about money, power, and a family legacy worth tearing me apart for. Margaret's voice on the phone was calm, rehearsed. "We need to sit down like a family," she said. "Tomorrow night. At the house. Her house, not mine, never mine." I almost refused. But something in Daniel's eyes when she spoke made me pause. Fear, resignation, maybe both. And so I went. The long oak dining table was already set when I arrived. Candles flickered, throwing shadows across portraits of ancestors glaring down from the walls. The air smelled of rosemary chicken and something sharper, power. Sophia was there, radiant in a silk dress, her hand resting dramatically over her stomach. The gesture made bile rise in my throat. Margaret sat at the head of the table, every inch the matriarch. Daniel was beside her, eyes hollow. And me? They placed me at the far end, as if I were already an outsider. "Emily," Margaret said with a tight smile. "Thank you for joining us. I know this isn't easy." I clenched my fists under the table. "You made it easy when you allowed your daughter to humiliate me." Her smile didn't falter. The truth can be painful. But necessary, Sophia chuckled softly. "Oh, come on, Emily. Don't sulk. This is bigger than you and me." "Bigger?" My voice was sharp. Margaret leaned forward. My husband left behind more than memories. His will was very clear. The first grandchild inherits the trust. Not the second. Not the third. The first, her words dropped like stones in water. Sophia's hand stroked her stomach again. "Which means, Emily, that your child will always be second best." Heat rose in my chest. I slammed my hands on the table. "There is no your child. Stop this farce." Daniel flinched. Margaret raised a hand. "Emily, calm yourself. Anger does not suit you. Neither does betrayal," I snapped. The room went quiet except for the clink of Sophia's fork as she leisurely cut into her chicken. She was enjoying this, every second of it. "Daniel," I said, turning to him, "are you going to let this continue? Are you really going to let them erase me and our child like this?" His mouth opened, but before he could speak, Margaret interrupted. "Daniel knows his duty. To the family, to the legacy. You were welcomed in, Emily, but perhaps you were never meant to stay." My chest tightened. The walls seemed to close in. Then Sophia leaned forward, her voice a dagger wrapped in velvet. "You'll see soon enough, sister." Some things are written in blood later that night. Back at home, I replayed every word. Legacy. First grandchild. Written in blood. I opened the drawer in Daniel's study, searching for answers. Among scattered bills and papers, I found a folder marked Harrison Estate. Inside, the will. My hands shook as I skimmed the lines, and then I saw it. The clause. The first grandchild born of the Harrison bloodline shall inherit the primary trust in full. I stared at it until the words blurred. If Sophia truly carried Daniel's child, my baby would be stripped of everything. Of inheritance, of recognition, of belonging. But something else caught my eye. A date. The document had been updated just months before. Around the time I'd been hospitalized. Around the time Sophia had started visiting more often. Was it coincidence? Or had this all been carefully planned? I read the will again and again, tracing the lines with my finger as if repetition would change the words. But the clause was clear. The first grandchild born of the Harrison bloodline shall inherit the primary trust in full. It was more than money. It was power, recognition. A place at the table that Sophia would never allow my child to have. And then my eyes caught the date. Dated March 14th. March 14th. I closed my eyes. That was the week I'd been in the hospital. The week the doctors had pumped me with painkillers after the scare with my pregnancy. The week Sophia took care of Daniel, cooking meals, running errands, smiling sweetly when I called from the hospital bed. The will had been updated while I was drugged and absent. My stomach twisted. Daniel came home late that night. He smelled of whiskey, his tie loosened, his eyes bloodshot. I didn't wait. When did my father-in-law change the will? He froze in the doorway like a deer caught in headlights. Emily, he muttered. It's complicated. Complicated? My voice rose. You sat there tonight letting your mother and sister humiliate me, and now I find out the will was changed while I was in the hospital? Did you know? He rubbed his temples. I didn't want this. Mother, she pushed him, said the family needed clarity. Clarity? I laughed bitterly. Or control. He sank onto the sofa, his shoulders sagging. Emily, you don't understand. The estate is massive. Businesses, properties, assets. My father built an empire, and the will decides who controls it. Mother thinks. She thinks Sophia deserves a stake. My heart raced. By faking a pregnancy? He flinched. That tiny reaction told me everything. You knew. My voice cracked. You knew this was about the money all along. His eyes met mine, guilt spilling out. She said it would secure the family. She said if Sophia carried the first grandchild, no one could contest her claim. I staggered back, pressing a hand to my belly. And what about me? What about our child? Does he even matter? Daniel's silence was louder than an answer. That night I couldn't sleep. I spread the documents across the dining table, hunting for cracks. And then I saw it. On the updated will, my father-in-law's signature looked wrong, too smooth, too fresh. I rummaged through older papers and found a birthday card he'd signed 2 years before. The handwriting was shaky, uneven, betraying his failing health. But on the will? Perfect. As though someone else had written it. Someone who had practiced his hand. I whispered the words out loud. Forgery. The bracelet on the dresser glinted in the light. Sophia's initials. Sophia's smug face at the dinner table. Margaret's cold declaration. This wasn't coincidence. This was construction. A conspiracy. The next morning, I called Hannah. My voice trembled as I told her everything. The will, the clause, the date, the signature. She was silent for a moment, then said, Emily, you need proof. Solid proof. If they forged legal documents, this is bigger than family drama. This is crime. Her words made my skin prickle. Crime. Yes, that's what this was. But how do you fight an enemy who sleeps in your guest room, who smiles at you while sharpening her knife under the table? That evening, Margaret called me again. Her tone was crisp, businesslike. Emily, you're welcome to stay in the family. But if you cause problems, don't expect protection. Think of your child. Think of his future. You wouldn't want him to grow up with nothing. It wasn't advice. It was a threat. If you were me, would you go straight to a lawyer with what I found? Or stay quiet, pretending to play along while searching for more evidence? Because in that moment, I realized something chilling. If they forged a signature once, what else were they capable of forging? And if I wasn't careful, the next forged document might have my name on it. I had just finished folding the will back into its envelope when a knock rattled my door. It was nearly midnight. Too late for visitors, too early for excuses. I opened it cautiously, and there stood Grace, my neighbor. Quiet, polite Grace, the woman who always waved when watering her roses but rarely spoke more than a few words. Tonight, her eyes darted nervously up and down the hallway. "Emily," she whispered, "we need to talk." Before I could answer, she pressed a large envelope into my hands. "Keep this hidden. Don't open it until you're alone." "Grace, what is this?" Her voice dropped lower. "Proof. I've seen things. I couldn't stay silent anymore." And then she hurried away before I could ask another question, her silhouette swallowed by the dark. My fingers trembled as I tore the envelope open at the kitchen table. Inside were photographs. The first one nearly made me drop them. Daniel, my husband, laughing, holding Sophia's hand, their bodies too close, their eyes too intimate. The date scrawled in the corner. February, when I had been in the hospital. I flipped to the next. Them leaving a restaurant. Daniel opening the car door for her, the way he used to for me. Another date. March. The month the will had been updated. My stomach lurched, but the third photo chilled me to the bone. It wasn't Daniel and Sophia this time. It was Margaret, sitting in her car, handing Sophia a white envelope stuffed with cash. I stared at it until the edges blurred. My chest tightened. Margaret had orchestrated this, not just tolerated it, planned it, paid for it. When Daniel came home that night, I shoved the photos across the table. "What is this?" I demanded. He froze, his face drained of color as he saw his own smile staring back at him from the glossy paper. "Emily, I can explain." "Explain?" My voice cracked. "Explain why you were holding hands with your sister? Why your mother is slipping her cash? Why the will magically changed the same month you were sneaking around with her?" His lips moved, but no sound came. He sat down heavily, his hands shaking. She tricked me," he whispered finally. "When you were in the hospital, she said you might not make it. That she'd take care of me. I was weak, Emily. I'm not proud of it. But I never wanted this. Tears blurred my vision. And yet you let her stand up at my baby shower and say she was carrying your child. You let her ruin me." He covered his face. "I thought if I stayed quiet, it would all go away. But Mother, she told me to say nothing. She said silence would protect the family, or destroy me." I gathered the photos into a pile. "I'm going to the police." His head shot up. "No, Emily, please. If you do that, Mother will bury you. She has friends-in-law, in politics. She'll make you look crazy." The word hit me like a slap. Crazy. I remembered how Sophia had whispered months ago that I seemed forgetful, how Margaret had suggested I rest more. Were they planting seeds even then? Daniel leaned forward desperately. "Don't do anything yet. Please, give me time to fix this." But I saw it now. He wasn't protecting me, he was protecting them. That night, alone in bed, I stared at the photos again. The truth was in my hands. Proof. Evidence. But evidence is worthless if no one believes you. And judging by the way Margaret had smiled at dinner, I was starting to wonder if she'd already written a different ending for me. I didn't sleep that night. The photographs lay scattered across the table like shattered glass. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Daniel's smile, Sophia's hand in his, Margaret's envelope of cash. At dawn, I heard the creak of the floorboards. Daniel stood in the doorway, his face gray, as if the night had aged him 10 years. "Emily," he whispered, "we need to talk." I didn't look up. Talk? Or lie again? He sighed, stepping closer. "I never meant for this to go so far." I shoved a photo toward him. "Then explain this. Explain why my sister-in-law is parading as the mother of your first child while I'm carrying your real one." His hands trembled as he picked up the photo. It wasn't love. It was weakness. I was drowning, Emily. When you were hospitalized, when they said you might lose the baby, His voice broke. I didn't know how to cope. And she was there, I clenched my fists. "So you slept with her?" He flinched. "Yes, but it wasn't just that. She drugged me." The words hit me like cold water. "Drugged?" He nodded miserably. "She'd bring me tea, wine, meals. I thought I was just exhausted, but I'd black out sometimes. I'd wake up in her apartment, not remembering how I got there." I stared at him. Part of me wanted to believe, but another part remembered my own hospital stay. The pills that left me groggy, the fog that clung for days. Sophia smiling at my bedside, tucking blankets around me, whispering, "Rest, you'll feel better soon." My skin prickled. "She told me," Daniel continued, "that you might not recover. That maybe you'd never carry a child to term. She said the family needed an heir and that she could give it." I swallowed hard, bile rising in my throat. "And you believed her?" His eyes glistened. I was weak. I didn't want to lose everything Father built. I thought, maybe it was the only way to protect us. I laughed bitterly. "Protect us? You destroyed us." The kettle whistled on the stove. I turned it off, my hands shaking so violently I nearly dropped the pot. "She drugged you," I repeated slowly. "And what about me? Was I drugged too?" Daniel's head snapped up. "What?" I stepped closer, my voice low. "In the hospital. They said my painkillers were standard, but I remember things, not making sense. Words slipping away, faces blurring. Sophia sitting at my bedside with that smile. He went pale. "Emily," I pressed a hand to my belly. "What if she was testing something on me? What if this isn't just betrayal? What if it's—" "Stop," Daniel said sharply, fear lacing his tone. "Don't say it." But the thought lodged in my mind, cold and heavy. This wasn't about love or lust. It was about control, and I had been their test subject. Later, I sat alone in the nursery, the stars on the mobile spinning in slow circles. My phone buzzed. A new message. From Hannah. I did some digging. "Emily, you're not going to believe this." I opened it. Attached was a scanned document, a medical record, Sophia's name in the corner. Not from now, from years ago. I read the note aloud, my voice trembling. Patient observed experimenting with sedatives on partner. Complaints dismissed due to lack of evidence. Sophia had done this before. The bracelet on the dresser gleamed again, mocking me. I whispered to the empty room. "What are you, Sophia? A sister-in-law? Or a predator?" The baby kicked as if demanding an answer I didn't have. "If you were me, would you believe Daniel's confession? Or see it as another excuse to cover his guilt?" Because deep down, I feared one thing most of all. That he wasn't just a victim of Sophia's games. He was her accomplice. And soon I would find out the truth. The house was too quiet. Daniel had gone to work, though work felt like a flimsy excuse for escaping the storm he'd helped create. I wandered through the rooms, the silence pressing on me like a weight. That's when I heard it. Voices. I paused near the library, the heavy oak door cracked open just enough. Inside, Margaret and Sophia were speaking in low tones, their words weaving through the stillness. "You've always been the true heir," Margaret whispered. My breath caught. "Then why don't they see it? Sophia's voice quivered with anger. Why does everything still belong to Emily and her child? Because appearances matter, Margaret hissed. The world believes you are Daniel's sister. That bond gives you power, but soon they will see the truth. I pressed my back against the wall, my heart pounding. Not his sister? Sophia's voice softened, dripping with resentment. You should have told him long ago. He wouldn't have understood, Margaret said sharply. But trust me, bloodlines are complicated. And you have more right to this family than Emily ever will. The words slammed into me like a physical blow. I staggered back, clamping a hand over my mouth. If Sophia wasn't Daniel's sister, then who was she? That evening, I rummaged through the filing cabinet in Daniel's study, my fingers shaking as I searched. Old bills, property deeds, medical files. And then, a yellowed envelope marked confidential. Inside, a birth certificate. I read it once, twice. My chest tightened. Sophia Marie Harrison. Except Harrison was scribbled in, written over another name, Stevens. My stomach churned. She wasn't born a Harrison. She had been brought into this family later. Adopted? Hidden? Something Margaret clearly wanted buried. The implications swirled. If Sophia wasn't Daniel's sister, then her claim to the inheritance was a lie. But then, why would Margaret call her the true heir? Unless Sophia carried something darker. A secret tied not to loyalty, but to manipulation. That night, I confronted Daniel. Who is she? I demanded, slamming the birth certificate onto the table. He blinked, confused. What are you talking about? She's not your sister. Look at it. He picked it up, his face paling as his eyes scanned the paper. I never knew this. Of course you didn't, I spat. Your mother made sure of it. But she knew. She always knew. And now she's using it to destroy me, to destroy us. Daniel sank into a chair, his hands trembling. If she's not my sister, then... His voice trailed off. Then what? I pressed. He looked up, his eyes haunted. Then what I did with her wasn't incest. It was... I slapped the table. Don't you dare make this easier for yourself. He flinched, guilt crashing over his features. But in that moment, I realized something terrifying. Margaret had engineered everything. She had hidden Sophia's true identity, manipulated Daniel's weakness, and rewritten the family's story to suit her own vision of power. And I was the casualty. Later, as I rocked silently in the nursery chair, I whispered to my unborn child, "You were supposed to inherit love, safety. Instead, you've inherited lies." The crib loomed before me, and for the first time, I wondered if my baby would ever be safe in a family that forged wills, rewrote bloodlines, and used betrayal as currency. The birth certificate weighed heavy in my purse like contraband. But another thought gnawed at me, sharper and darker. Sophia's pregnancy. If she wasn't Daniel's sister, if her identity was already a lie, what proof did I have that she was even pregnant? The answer came one morning when I saw her at the pharmacy. She stood at the counter, chatting loudly, basking in the curious looks. She placed a hand on her stomach, glowing like an actress in the spotlight. But when the pharmacist handed her a paper bag, something caught my eye. Not prenatal vitamins, not supplements, pills for nausea, the kind given to chemotherapy patients. I froze. My chest tightened. I followed her out, my heart racing. She slipped the bag into her designer purse, then adjusted her sunglasses, smiling smugly as if she owned the street. I ducked behind a lamppost, my breath shallow. That's when the plan hit me. That evening, while Daniel was out, I called in a favor from Hannah. She worked at a clinic, one with quiet corners and discreet files. I need a test, I whispered over the phone. Blood, DNA, anything to confirm if Sophia's really pregnant. There was a pause. Emily, that's dangerous. If they find out, they've already taken everything from me. I snapped. I won't let them take my child's future too. Silence. Then Hannah sighed, Bring me something. A toothbrush. A strand of hair. Anything. It wasn't hard. Sophia had left her jacket at Margaret's house after another family dinner. In the pocket, a used tissue. I delivered it to Hannah the next morning, my hands shaking. 2 days later, she called. Her voice was hushed, urgent. Emily, she's not pregnant. The words washed over me like icy rain. I gripped the phone. Are you sure? Positive. No fetal markers. Nothing. She lied. My knees buckled and I sank into a chair. Relief and fury tangled inside me, choking me. She's been playing us, I whispered. But Hannah's voice grew darker. It's not just that. The blood sample showed something else. Elevated sedative levels, strong ones. My mind flashed back. My hospital stay, the fog in my head, the pills Sophia helpfully offered Daniel when he couldn't sleep. This wasn't just a lie. It was a pattern. That evening, I confronted Daniel. She's not pregnant. I tossed the report onto the table. He looked at it, then at me. His face turned white. Emily, what have you done? What have I done? She's the liar. She's been poisoning us with drugs, forging wills, stealing our future. He buried his face in his hands. Mother said, she told me, Emily, you don't understand. If you go public with this, I cut him off, my voice sharp. If I go public, what? Margaret will destroy me? Or Sophia will try to silence me? He didn't answer. His silence was confirmation enough. Later that night, I sat in the nursery, the report in one hand, the bracelet in the other. The stars above the crib spun lazily. If Sophia could fake a pregnancy, she could fake anything. And with Margaret backing her, the world would believe it. But I had proof now. Proof of lies. Proof of drugs. And I had to decide. Expose them now and risk everything. Or wait for the perfect moment to bring their empire crashing down. The lie about the pregnancy should have been enough. Enough to end their charade. Enough to give me leverage. But betrayal has a way of multiplying, and Margaret and Sophia weren't done yet. I found out by accident. Daniel had left his laptop open on the dining table. He never did that. Curiosity tugged at me and fear whispered louder. I moved the cursor, the screen glowing to life. A bank portal. Numbers danced across the screen. Transfers, large ones, 50,000. 75, 100,000. All moved into an account under the name S.M. Harrison, Sophia Marie. My chest constricted. I scrolled faster, my hands shaking. The dates lined up perfectly. Hospital stay, will update, baby shower. Every betrayal matched a withdrawal. I whispered into the empty room. They've been paying her. When Daniel came home that evening, I was waiting. The laptop sat open between us. What is this? My voice was cold, sharper than the knife I had imagined plunging into the table. He froze. Emily, please. Don't say please. Explain. Why is money disappearing into Sophia's account? He rubbed his temples, sweat beading at his brow. Mother said it was to secure her future. To keep her loyal. Loyal? My laugh was bitter. You mean to keep her quiet? He flinched, his silence the only confirmation I needed. You've been funding her lies, I spat. Funding my humiliation. While I sit here preparing for a child, you've been handing over everything to the woman destroying me. His voice cracked. I didn't know how to stop it. You didn't want to stop it. That night, I called Grace. My neighbor's voice was steady but urgent. Emily, I've seen Sophia do this before, she said. My breath hitched. What do you mean before? Another man. Years ago. She lived 2 houses down from me before she moved in with Margaret. Same pattern. She played caretaker, whispered poison into the wife's ear, drained the man's accounts. When it was over, she vanished. The wife ended up in a psychiatric ward. The blood drained from my face. Are you saying? I'm saying you're not her first victim. And if you're not careful, you won't be her last. I paced the nursery that night, my mind racing. The bank records, the forged will, the fake pregnancy, the whispers about my mental state. It was a design, a trap laid piece by piece. And I was standing in the center of it, my unborn child cradled inside me, while they closed in. I sat by the crib, whispering to the baby within me. They can take money, they can take names, but they won't take you. But even as I said it, doubt gnawed at me. Because I was learning fast. When family decides you don't belong, they'll rewrite the rules until you disappear. If you were me, would you go public with the financial proof now? Or keep silent, gathering more, knowing that waiting might also mean losing everything? Because one truth burned in my chest that night. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was theft. It was entrapment. And it was war. It was Margaret's idea to host another family gathering. She called it a celebration dinner for the Harrison legacy. To me, it sounded like a funeral march. Mine. But this time, I didn't come empty-handed. The forged will, the DNA test, the bank transfers, all tucked into a manila folder clutched tight against my chest. The dining hall shimmered with chandeliers, laughter echoing off polished marble floors. Margaret sat at the head like a queen on her throne, Sophia at her side, her hand resting dramatically on her stomach as though her phantom child kicked beneath her palm. Daniel sat stiff, silent. I walked in, my heels clicking against the floor. Every head turned. For once, I welcomed their stares. Margaret's smile was cool. Emily, you decided to join us. I dropped the folder on the table with a sharp thud. Yes, and I decided to bring the truth. The room fell silent. I pulled out the DNA test first, holding it high. Sophia is not pregnant. She never was. This entire charade, lies, every word gasps rippled through the guests. Eyes darted from me to Sophia, who merely smirked, leaning back in her chair. That's ridiculous, she said smoothly. Emily's jealous. She forged that paper herself, I froze. She had spun it before I could breathe. Margaret clasped her hands. Emily, really? To forge medical records? To stoop this low? It's shameful. No, I shouted, slamming down the bank transfers. Then explain these. Daniel's money funneled into Sophia's account. Hundreds of thousands gone. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, sweat beading on his forehead. Sophia's laugh was light, mocking. Poor Emily. You don't understand family business. Daniel supported me because he loves me, because he knows where true loyalty lies. The words sliced through me. Gasps turned into whispers. Heads shook. I was no longer the victim. I was the desperate wife, clawing at scraps of dignity. I pulled out the will, waving it in the air. And this? The signature isn't even his. It was forged while I was in the hospital. Margaret rose to her feet, her voice sharp as steel. Enough. The chandelier above us seemed to tremble at the force of her command. Emily, she continued, you've embarrassed yourself enough. The stress of pregnancy has clearly clouded your mind. We all know how fragile you've been since your hospital stay. Perhaps... Her eyes flicked to Daniel. Perhaps you need help. The words landed like a verdict. Gasps turned into nods. Whispers turned into agreement. The crowd shifted against me, the truth dissolving under the weight of Margaret's authority. I looked at Daniel, praying for him to stand, to fight, to say something, anything. But he lowered his head. Silent. Again. Tears blurred my vision, but I forced my voice steady. You can twist the truth. You can gaslight me. But you can't erase the evidence. Sophia leaned forward, her smile cruel. Evidence means nothing if no one believes it, sister. The word sister dripped like poison. And in that moment, I realized they weren't just trying to take my inheritance. They were rewriting my reality. In the corner, Hannah's phone glowed, She was recording. Quietly, carefully. A tiny act of rebellion in a room built on lies. I caught her eye. She gave the faintest nod. It wasn't victory. Not yet. But it was hope. I didn't sleep after the showdown. The humiliation replayed in my mind like a cruel song on repeat. Sophia's smug grin, Margaret's commanding voice, Daniel's silence. Their words had turned me into the villain of my own story. But by morning, the whispers had spread further than their mansion walls. It started with a message from Hannah. Check your phone. Now I clicked the link, my heart racing. A video. Shaky at first, but clear enough. My voice trembling with rage, declaring the pregnancy fake. Sophia's mocking laugh. Margaret's cold dismissal. Perhaps you need help. And finally, Sophia's cruel whisper. Evidence means nothing if no one believes it, sister. The clip ended there. It was raw, brutal, and devastating. By noon, it had been shared among relatives, neighbors, business associates. My phone buzzed with messages. Is this true? How could she say that? Are they covering something? For the first time, the cracks weren't in me. They were in them. When I walked to the corner store that afternoon, strangers glanced at me differently. Not with pity, but curiosity. Suspicion. One woman even touched my arm gently. Sweetheart, she whispered. Don't let them silence you. Families like that, they eat people alive. Her words nearly broke me, but I swallowed the tears. Back home, Daniel was pacing the living room, his phone buzzing nonstop. When he saw me, his face twisted with panic. Emily, what did you do? What I did, I snapped. Your silence forced me into this. If Hannah hadn't recorded that moment, the world would still believe Sophia's lie. He dragged his hands through his hair. You don't understand. Mother is furious. She says you've crossed a line. Good, I spat. Let her choke on it. But then he whispered words that chilled me more than Sophia's smirk ever could. She said, she'll take the baby from you if you keep this up. My heart stopped. She can't, I breathed. His voice broke. She has doctors, lawyers, judges in her pocket. If she paints you as unstable? He trailed off, his eyes full of regret. The trap was tightening again. That evening, Grace knocked on my door. She looked pale, clutching her coat around her. Emily, she whispered. Margaret's been talking to people. Important people. She's building a case to declare you unfit. I heard it myself. I sank into a chair, my pulse hammering. How long do I have? Grace's eyes were grave. Not long. But that video? It bought you time. People are asking questions now. They don't fully believe Margaret's story anymore. I held my belly, whispering to my unborn child, we have to survive this. Somehow that night, Hannah came over, her eyes fierce. We can't stop now, she said. We need more proof. Financial, medical, anything that shows Sophia and Margaret are lying. I hesitated. If we push too far, they'll strike harder. She leaned closer, her voice low. They already have, Emily. You just don't know it yet. Her words echoed long after she left. At midnight, my phone buzzed with an unknown number, a text message. Stop digging or you'll lose more than your marriage. My hands shook as I read it. No name, no signature, just a threat dripping with certainty. I stared out the window, into the night, wondering how far they would go. And then I remembered Margaret's words at the dinner table. Think of your child. You wouldn't want him to grow up with nothing. It wasn't a warning. It was a promise. The video had given me hope. A fragile, flickering hope that truth might finally pierce their lies. But hope can be dangerous. It makes you believe you can win. I met with a lawyer the next morning. I laid the folder on his polished desk. The DNA test, the bank transfers, the forged will. His brow furrowed as he flipped through each page. You have something, he said carefully. but you're up against a very powerful family. This won't be easy. I don't care, I said. File for divorce, full custody. I won't let my child grow up in their shadow. He nodded slowly. If that's what you want, we'll begin. For the first time in weeks, I felt steady, strong, like maybe I wasn't trapped anymore. But power doesn't slip away quietly. 2 days later, I arrived at court with Hannah by my side. I clutched my folder like a lifeline. Daniel sat across the aisle, pale and hollow. Sophia lounged behind him, smirking, her baby bump conveniently concealed by a flowing dress. Margaret sat tall, her eyes cold steel. My lawyer spoke first, laying out the evidence. He presented the DNA test, the transfers, the inconsistencies in the will. For a moment, I saw the judge's brows knit, doubt flashing across his face. Then Margaret's attorney rose, smooth, confident, a shark in a suit. Your Honor, he began, what Mrs. Harrison fails to disclose is her own instability. We have medical records documenting her confusion, memory lapses, erratic behavior during her pregnancy. We have testimonies from caregivers. He held up a file. A psychiatric evaluation recommending monitoring. The room spun. What? I whispered. He laid the papers before the judge, my name scrawled across them. Notes I had never seen, diagnoses I had never been given, words like paranoia, delusional, unfit. I shook my head violently. That's not true. Those are forged. Margaret leaned forward, her lips curving into the faintest smile. The judge glanced at me with measured pity. Mrs. Harrison, please control yourself. No. My voice cracked. This is a lie. They fabricated everything. Daniel wouldn't meet my eyes. His silence screamed louder than any accusation. The gavel struck. Custody remained undecided, but the damage was done. My evidence looked tainted. My credibility shattered. Outside the courthouse, Hannah gripped my shoulders. Emily, listen to me. They forged those records. We'll prove it I could barely breathe. They're going to take my baby, Hannah. They're going to bury me alive. Tears streamed down her face. Then we fight harder. But inside me, something broke. I had tried to strike back, tried to expose them, and instead, my revenge had snapped shut like a bear trap on my own leg. That night, I sat in the nursery, the mobile spinning lazily above the crib. The bracelet still lay on the dresser, glinting in the dim light. I picked it up, clutching it in my fist until the edges dug into my skin. They had forged the will. They had forged the pregnancy. And now, they had forged my mind. And the world believed them. If you were me, would you keep clawing at the walls, risking everything? Or would you surrender, hoping silence might save the only thing left? The child still kicking inside me? Because in that moment, I realized something bitterly true. Revenge doesn't always free you. Sometimes it chains you tighter. And Margaret held the keys. The courthouse echo still rings in my ears. Margaret's smile. Sophia's smirk. Daniel's silence. All of it carved into me like names on a gravestone. I walk slower now, my hand always pressed against my belly. Not because of weakness, but because it's the only place I still feel strong. My baby is still here. Still mine. Still untouched by their poison. For now. I sit in the nursery at night, rocking in the chair. The room feels less like a haven and more like a waiting room before a storm. Every creak of the floorboards makes me flinch, imagining lawyers at the door, court orders in hand. I whisper to the child inside me. They can take everything else. The house, the money, even your father's name. But they will never take you from me. Not while I breathe. And yet, fear gnaws at me. What if my breath isn't enough? What if Margaret's power stretches further than my will? Yesterday, I passed Margaret in town. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her eyes said it all. I've already won. Sophia stood beside her, feigning a hand on her flat stomach. The crowd around them smiled, congratulated, celebrated. The lie still lived, even after the truth had been spoken. It was then I understood something I hadn't before. Evil doesn't always need to hide. Sometimes it thrives in plain sight, protected by charm, money, and silence. Daniel came by this morning. He stood in the doorway, eyes hollow. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I stared at him, cradling my belly. Sorry doesn't build a future. Sorry doesn't keep a child safe. He nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. I don't deserve forgiveness. No, I said simply. You don't. For once, he didn't argue. He left quietly, his footsteps fading like everything else in my life. So here I am, alone, betrayed, humiliated, and yet not broken, because within me still beats a tiny heart. A heart that doesn't yet know the cruelty of the world it will enter. A heart that might, just might, give me the courage to face Margaret again. I don't know what will happen when this child arrives. Will I lose them to the machine Margaret controls? Or will I find strength I never knew I had? I only know this. The war isn't over. It's only paused, waiting for the day my child takes their first breath. And on that day, I'll be ready. Ready to fight with everything left in me. If you've stayed until the end, maybe your heart has felt something too. Leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe if you'd like to keep sharing these journeys with me. Because this story may end here, but my battle has only begun.